I'm Oscar and I just finished Ironman Copenhagen 2025. It was one of the hardest and most rewarding days of my life. Here's a full recap of how it all went down. I was very nervous the last few days leading up to the event. It was a lot of new things for me. For example, traveling with the bike, making sure you have everything, especially when you're flying to a race, can be quite stressful. I never really sleep much the night before a race, but luckily this time I was actually able to sleep a few hours. I had set my alarm for 5 a.m. But honestly, I was awake since 2:30 a.m. from excitement. I was staying in a hotel that I had booked through Ironman, through the Nirvana organization. It was called the Copenhagen Strand, and it was located really centrally in Copenhagen. It's a nice hotel, and they had no problems with the bike boxes or anything like that. And they opened breakfast from 4 a.m. on the day of the race, so that was really good. For breakfast on race morning, I had as many pieces of white toast with jam as I could eat, and some coffee. I took a rental e-bike to the start, aimed to arrive there at around 6 a.m. It was a really beautiful morning, perfect weather. I was sipping a bit on some Morton carb mix on the way there. It was about 15 minutes to the start, so I got there with around an hour until the start time of the race. When I got to the start, I went to set up my bike in T1. Actually, an important thing to note about Ironman Copenhagen is that Transition 1 and Transition 2 are in different locations, so you won't have access to your T2 bag on the morning of the race, only your T1 bag. So what I did was basically just putting Vaseline on my shoes, clipping them into my bike, putting my bottles on the bike, calibrating my power meter, and making sure my Garmin was in sleep mode with the GPS already loaded, things like that. The whole setup of the bike took a little bit longer than I would have liked. So actually I had got brand new goggles to use on race morning because I didn't want them to be foggy at all. I wanted to go to the warm-up area. There was like a swim warm-up area. Unfortunately, I was a bit late because I was supposed to be starting at 7:08 a.m. with the second fastest swim group. In Ironman Copenhagen, they make you self-seed, and I was expecting a finish time of between 1 hour and 1:04 in the swim. So I got a yellow cap and we were supposed to start at 7:08 a.m. But yeah, as I said, with the swim warm-up, I was kind of running out of time. Didn't manage to get the perfect fit on my goggles, and then I actually had to run to the start and jump the barrier to make it into my swim group with the yellow caps. So that was a little bit stressful. So that's something I'm going to do different next time. I'm going to come even earlier because the whole bike setup did take quite a lot of time and I was a little bit stressed in the morning. So I think, yeah, next time I'll give myself at least like 1.5 hours at the location before the race starts. The atmosphere before the race start was really amazing. They sang the Danish national anthem and then they did a Viking clap. And there was just this kind of tense atmosphere in the air. It felt like people were getting ready for battle. They had a rolling swim start. As I was lining up, suddenly all of my nerves disappeared. Exactly at 7:10 a.m., it was my turn to get into the water. The Ironman Copenhagen swim it is in the ocean, so it's salt water, but it's sort of in a protected lagoon. You swim underneath 2 different bridges on the way out, so that makes sighting pretty easy. You just swim under these 2 bridges, and then you know that you have to turn around, and you swim underneath the same 2 bridges to go back, and it's only 1 loop. You don't have to do a second loop where you're maybe swimming past a lot of swimmers that are slower than you. That I found pretty nice. The swim felt pretty smooth. I was trying to just focus on following the feet of swimmers that were passing me, that were going around the same speed or maybe even slightly faster. That was kind of a nice thing to focus on to not make the swim so mundane. What I also liked about the swim was that it's quite shallow there, so you could actually see the bottom of this inner harbor. Usually in open water, you're swimming in murky water and you can't really tell how fast you're going. So being able to see the bottom and also being able to see people's feet in front of you through the clear water was really nice. As I said, I didn't manage to get the perfect fit on my goggles before the swim starts. So I did have kind of issues with water leaking into my goggles, which was a bit annoying. I had to turn onto my back and get the water out of my goggles a few times. So that slowed me down a little bit. And then at around 2,500 meters into the swim, I suddenly got this crazy cramp in my left calf. And it was so bad that I couldn't keep swimming. So I had to sort of turn on my back and stretch out my calf in the middle of the water. Luckily, it kind of improved quickly. It was sort of coming back, but I just tried to use my legs as little as possible and relax them. And I managed to control it to the finish of the swim. I ended up finishing the swim in a total time of 1 hour and 5 minutes with a pace of 1 minute and 43 seconds per 100 meters. Transition 1 went pretty smoothly until it didn't. I'm always a little bit dizzy coming out of the water in an Ironman swim, and that's because you're horizontal the whole time and you're using your arms a lot, so all of the blood is rushing to your upper body. And then when you suddenly stand up vertical again, you just get really dizzy. Basically, it was the first time that I had left my cycling shoes clipped onto the bike. What the pros do is that they get out of the swim and they run barefoot to their bike, hop onto the bike, slip into the shoes while they're already on the bike. So I was trying to do that to save a little bit of time. It was something that I had practiced quite a lot on my bike in training, but it was a little bit different in the race because of all the adrenaline. And like I said, I was a little bit dizzy after the swim. So I managed to slip into the right shoe, but I had quite a lot of trouble getting into the left shoe. So I was looking down, trying to slip into the left shoe, and then suddenly I looked up and there was a curb that I was about to hit. So I suddenly had to kind of swerve, and I sort of like grazed the side of the curb. Throughout this, I guess like from suddenly turning the handlebars, all of the weight of the bottle on my bottle and Garmin mount setup caused the riser to snap. So my whole kind of front bottle system snapped off the bike, including the Garmin holder. So I was kind of there thinking that the whole race might be over, that I might DNF. And I was just kind of there holding the thing, like trying to see if I could put it back onto my bike. But of course that wasn't going to work because it snapped clean off. Basically what I decided to do was just take the Garmin off the mount, stuff it into my jersey, throw the between the arms system onto the side of the road and just bike off. No power meter with no GPS and none of the data that I usually use in a race. All I had was my watch, which was tracking heart rate, distance, and time. So that's all I had to use. What I'm going to do next time is not try to slip into the shoes immediately, but rather just put my feet on top of the shoes and cycle till I'm out of the transition area and out of the beginning chaos of the bike. Because what I heard from my parents who were watching after the race was that actually a lot of people struggled to kind of get onto the bike and slip into their shoes. So some people had worse accidents than me. They were crashing, falling over, all sorts of things. So what I'm going to do is cycle out of kind of the madness of that area, get onto where there's a long straight road, and then slip into my shoes. Despite that little mishap, the bike actually went pretty well. Overall, the bike course is a pretty fast one, although the first 15 kilometers you're riding through the city of Copenhagen. So that part is a little bit slow, but once you get out of there, you're on this like open road on the coast and you're just flying. The course has about 1,100 meters of elevation, but all of these are through not so steep hills. So it doesn't feel like 1,100 meters of elevation. And I wouldn't say it slows you down a lot because you also gain a lot of speed through the descents. The course consists of 2 loops. There's some places where there's just no spectators at all, where you're pretty much all on your own. And then there were some places with a lot of spectators actually on the bike course, so that was pretty cool. There were some hills where there were just like lines of spectators on both sides and they're cheering for you. And it kind of feels like you're on a mountain stage of Tour de France or something like that. Yeah, that really put a smile on my face. But I was also pretty shocked about one thing. I don't know if this is normal with Ironman racing, but at least here I saw a lot of drafting and pretty much 0 referees on the course. I guess they were all up at the front of the race looking at the pros and whether they were drafting. But in the age group category, there was just so much drafting. I saw pelotons of like 30 people who were riding right behind each other in groups. And sometimes these big groups, they caught up to you. I would try to go my own way, but then the entire peloton would just follow you and swallow you up again. So it was actually pretty hard to get away from them, even if you wanted to. Of course, it made you faster overall because you got to save a bit of energy in the group sometimes. But I did also find it pretty annoying that people were just blatantly drafting with no remorse, basically. Still, I tried to focus on my own race. Eventually got to the last 30 kilometers of the race, which then you're going down the coastline back to Copenhagen. And we actually had a tailwind on the day. So you're flying like this straight road with a tailwind. And there I was like hitting speeds of 47, 50 kilometers per hour. And that was really fun. Throughout the bike, I had kind of been dealing with tight hip flexors and tight lower back. Like I could feel some discomfort throughout, but for the most part, I managed to just ignore it. Yeah, as I'll explain, like that kind of came back to bite me on the run. I finished the bike in 4 hours and 38 minutes with an average speed of 38.6 kilometers an hour. When you get off the bike, T2 is in a different place than T1. T2 is in the middle of the city. So it's a transition zone that you have never seen before because they actually bring your T2 bike to that location and put it there for you. What's kind of cool about Ironman Copenhagen is that they have bike catchers for the age groupers. So you just get off your bike and there's people there ready to take your bike. You hand it to them and they go and rack it for you. So yeah, you just hop off your bike and you run as fast as you can to find your transition bag. I was a little bit worried because I had never seen the transition zone before, that I would be able to find my bag. But when you get there, it's all pretty obvious and everything is labeled really well. So I was able to find my bag pretty quick and didn't really have any issues there. Transition 2 took 2 hours. Transition 2 took 2 minutes and 53 seconds. As I was in transition and starting the run, overall I felt actually pretty okay. And I felt like I had enough energy. But like, I don't know, after running for a minute or so, I started to notice that my hip flexors and my lower back were so tight from the bike, it started getting really painful. Every step hurt. I couldn't really push myself forwards. So I was more kind of just shuffling up and down. So I ended up going pretty slowly for about like the first 8 kilometers. I was dealing with that. And yeah, eventually I decided that I just couldn't go on like that. So I stopped, I think, 2 or 3 times at aid stations to try and do some stretches and to loosen it up. And eventually, I think from just getting warmed up and through some of the stretching, it did go away. So that was at around the 8 kilometer mark. And then I also managed to go to the bathroom. After that, I felt pretty good. And I think for around like 5 to 6 kilometers, I was running really well at around like a 4-minute 30 pace to a 4-minute 20 per kilometer pace. And that was kind of the target pace that I wanted to be hitting. But then at around 13 kilometers, I started getting stomach issues, started to feel really bloated. Yeah, it was so bad that I just couldn't run fast anymore. And I actually had to stop to go into one of the porta potties. I had practiced my nutrition, but of course, like I didn't know how my body would react after 6-7 hours of doing sports and taking in about like 120 grams of carbs an hour. Yeah, it was evident that it didn't handle it very well. I think also it could be the caffeine gels. So because I lost my bottle in transition 1, my whole nutrition plan was kind of out the window. I ended up taking a lot of nutrition from people handing them out at aid stations on the bike. And so what I got as well was a few caffeine gels. Maybe I took, I think, 2 on the bike and 1 at the beginning of the run. That may have just not sat well and may have contributed to the stomach problems. But anyways, that's something that I was kind of dealing with for the rest of the run. So I had to go into the porta potties multiple times to take care of business. And of course, that took a while. And in general, it's just not a comfortable thing to be dealing with when you're running a marathon. And then by the half marathon point, my legs were also just kind of cooked. I know that I hadn't run enough volume leading up to the race. The endurance in my legs was just not there. Yeah, I was running as fast as I could, but I could feel my lungs were tired. My heart was feeling tired. It was feeling kind of sore to breathe. It was kind of survival mode from that point on. I was just trying to play mental tricks on myself and trying to motivate myself just to run to the next aid station so that I could walk through the aid station, eat some food, drink some cola or whatever was there, and then run again another 3 kilometers to the next aid station. Eventually I got to like the last 7 kilometers, and what I was telling myself in my head was that I was just running 2 easy loops of my local park in Amsterdam, which is the Vondel Park. 2 loops would be exactly 7 kilometers, which is what I did plenty of times in my training and should be really easy. But running those last 7 kilometers at around 5-minute 10 per kilometer pace was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But I did manage to motivate myself to keep running and not walk until the end. I could see that I was on track for a sub 9.5 hour total time. I just kept telling myself this was going to be my first Ironman time forever. And all the training I had done, all the effort I had put in leading up to this, I was not going to quit now. Like I was going to do whatever it took to run to the end, finish strong, and make it in under 9.5 hours. So that's what I did. And I finished the marathon in a time of 3 hours and 38 minutes. Crossing the finish line was really emotional. I had given everything that I had. My body was shivering. I just really wanted to sit down. I was also crying a little bit because of all the emotions and how much effort I had put into it. Didn't really have any energy to celebrate at that moment. Yeah, a lot went wrong. The calf cramp, T1, bike disaster with the bottles snapping off, the stomach issues, the back problems. But I'm really happy that I fought through it all, problem solved, and dealt with the adversity, and I finished in a total time of 9 hours and 28 minutes. But yeah, I think that's what Ironman is about as well. In a race that's 9, 10, 11 hours long, not everything is going to go perfect. And the chances that something goes wrong are pretty high. I think Ironman is about dealing with adversity, problem solving on the spot, and making the best of what happens on race day. In comparison to racing 70.3s, I feel like those races are a lot more forgiving. It just doesn't expose your weaknesses or mistakes that you made maybe throughout the day. But when you're racing for 9-10 hours, those small weaknesses or mistakes, they really get exposed towards the end of the race. And that's what happened with me. So definitely a learning experience. But even though the day was super painful, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, that feeling subsided pretty quickly. Already the same day, I knew that I was motivated to do another one. I think Copenhagen, it was just such a fun experience. The whole city comes together and just celebrates the Ironman on that day. So I think it's a really fun one to do. I'm going to be racing lots more Ironman races next year. I haven't announced exactly which ones yet, but I'll be doing that soon over on my Instagram. So stay tuned and follow for more if you want to see how my Ironman journey progresses.